Avast ye landlubbers, it's You're All Doomed, the podcast that is slowly rowing its way through Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan 13 minutes at a time. I'm Crazy Nautical Greg.
And I'm Brian. This chunk begins with Sean pushing a bunch of buttons on a computer panel and ends with a dark alley.
Do you want to take that again, or are you happy with how?
I was just going to cut the silence out, but yeah, it might be easier just to do it again. Are you happy with that?
You going to call that good?
Nailed it. So that's what you're going with, huh?
And are you happy with those results, Brian?
I'm tempted to leave that in. Just like the thing that happens
That's
after.
actually not bad. You want to just keep going? Something that I don't really understand. Why does everyone assume Sean would know the first thing about operating a huge boat just because his father is a sea captain? I don't know how to do what my dad did for a living.
We want New York. We want New York.
When are they going to get to the fireworks factory?
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's a fair point.
No, I know what you mean. It's not like mastering the operation of a large shipping vessel is hereditary.
Yeah, and I mean, if he'd spent, a lot of time on the boat with his dad, he wouldn't have fucked up blowing the horn. So, yeah, I don't get that. But he does manage to get the ship back on course, only for Jason to immediately punch the fire alarm, which for some reason wasn't going off automatically, despite a shot of Wayne's body engulfed in flames.
I wondered the same thing, and it goes back to like how much research did the high school really do before choosing the ship? It's got faulty fire alarms, it has no railings, the staff is a bunch of idiots, and Lakeview High School is just like, perfect, let's send the kids out on this ship.
It was probably affordable. I mean, they're probably paying for this with a bake sale, so... Yeah. Charles arms himself with a flare gun to go exact vigilante justice on Nautical Ralph, who has disappeared as the fire spreads below decks.
In case you're wondering, the flare gun is a Webley and Scott No. 1 Mark III. For any of you flare gun fanatics listening to this.
Meanwhile, Miles, who you'll remember is the Jeff Spicoli character from earlier, encounters Jason with a really great blocked axe swipe, and then scampers away, only to learn of Jason's teleportation skills. He climbs a mast, hoping to escape, but Jason appears immediately beneath him and throws him off. Meanwhile, Julius, who is searching below, comes upon Miles's body skewered on the antenna array. It's pretty sweet. Miles was played by Gordon Curry. Guess what show he was on once? He was also in the movie Alive and a couple of the Puppet Master movies. And he played Nikolai Carpathia, the Antichrist, in the Kirk Cameron Left Behind movie. When he first moved to L.A. to pursue his acting career, he was roommate with Brad Pitt for a couple of years.
Early in his career, he also dressed as Ronald McDonald, appearing in parades and magic shows around L.A., as well as terrifying the shit out of small children. I did read, in terms of Miles' character, that his death was cut by the MPAA. The original version showed him actually falling onto the antenna, not just the aftermath. Ooh. And there's also a deleted scene that revealed that Miles was a champion high diver, so his death would have been quite appropriate. Having just dispatched Miles, Jason appears directly behind Julius and hurls his ass overboard. Again, like you pointed out, it's like a 30-foot drop into dark, stormy water. So I don't know. We don't know if Julius survives that fall. We cut to Rennie's room, and despite being thrown overboard just minutes earlier, for some reason, only the top half of Rennie's clothes are wet, while the bottom half is completely dry. And after she's taking a look out the porthole window again, she turns around and has a vision of a slime-covered kid yelling, "Help me."
Yeah, he's shivering and calling for help, and he's got hair, but this time it seems a little bit patchy, and one eye is definitely wonky.
And now he looks like a young Bill Murray.
The ghost fades, but as she's gawping at this, Jason headbutts through the porthole behind her, reaches through and grabs her by the neck. As she's being strangled, the ghost boy reappears to watch this happening. Again, very strange. Scrabbling frantically for anything close by, Rennie grabs her Stephen King pen and rams it into Jason's left eye hole. He lets go and yanks the pen out, causing a thin stream of gray gook to ooze out. Ghost boy fades away again.
We get a quick shot showing that the fire down below, which is also Greg's favorite Steven Seagal movie, has seriously fucked up the engine room. Colleen has gathered up a bunch of randoms and has instructed them to hide out in the dance hall until she comes back. Meanwhile, Charles is sneaking around the kitchen with his trusty flare gun. There's a really cool shot where Charles walks by a rack that has various kitchen tools hanging from it, including a big-ass knife. But when he walks past it the second time, a few seconds later, the knife is gone.
Oh, sweet.
And it doesn't take long for us to find out who took the knife. It's Crazy Nautical Ralph. He gets into a hilariously brief scuffle with Charles and then runs away.
Charles gets a slash on the arm, I think. So Nautical Ralph did manage to inflict some damage. For some reason, water then begins pouring into the ship, so apparently the explosion in the engine room has caused the boat to begin sinking. Like you kind of said before, when the fuck are we going to get to Manhattan?
As all hell is breaking loose on the ship, Rennie and Sean make their way into a small break room where they're met by Charles. Charles can't grab Rennie out of Sean's arms fast enough. He says that Rennie should have never set foot on the ship and that it's all Sean's fault. How? Sean, with some of the least convincing acting we've seen yet, says this is Jason's fault and that it's time that you listen to me if you want off the ship alive. He then proceeds to say absolutely nothing. So I don't know why we're suddenly supposed to listen to Mr. Didn't Know Proper Departure Protocol.
Yeah, he's taking charge under battle conditions, I guess.
Colleen then comes charging up the same stairs that Sean and Rennie just came from, which led to the engine room below deck. Yet she says that she just came from lowering the lifeboat, singular, which should have been lowered from above deck, right?
Yes.
So, okay, I question what she's actually doing.
They're getting ready to head to the lifeboat, and Colleen says that she has to go get the others that she left in the dance hall restaurant. Sean declares there is no more restaurant. So those 4 randos that she left there are fucked. Do we count those as Jason's victims?
It's a good point. I would say no, because it's more collateral damage, but it is the first time that we're really seeing any collateral damage from Jason. It's not like he sets explosives and blows up houses with lots of people in them or anything. So, no, I call this a casualty of the SS Lazarus and just, stupidity for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay, fair enough.
And agreeing to go on this trip in the first place.
Yeah, good point. Probably because they already turned in their biology projects.
That's right.
Because they were randos, basically, glorified extras, we have no information on who played them. So farewell, you 4.
Charles, Rennie, Sean, and Colleen head outside into the stormy deck, and they're met by Crazy Nautical Ralph, who staggers in front of them with a knife in his hand. After Charles unsuccessfully tries to fire the flare gun, Crazy Nautical Ralph falls to the ground, revealing that an axe has been deposited into his spine. So R.I.P. Crazy Nautical Ralph.
Who was played heroically by Alex Diakon. He was on several episodes of The X-Files, as well as the second X-Files movie. He also appeared in the TV series The Sentinel, and he's still around. He was most recently in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
And he also starred in that show Danger Bay that I mentioned a few episodes earlier, which I promise we're going to hear about a little bit later.
Lightning randomly hits the main mast as everyone's climbing down the ladder to the lifeboat. It's easy to miss this detail, but Rennie finds that her dog Toby is already in the lifeboat.
Somehow.
They look up to see Jason standing on the edge of the ship, but he's gone when they look away momentarily. So they begin rowing away, but Julius blasts out of the water next to them, so they pull his ass aboard.
There's a couple of things to unpack here. The first of which is the lifeboat, which appears to be the only lifeboat on this ship that is sinking. So The lifeboat that's maybe big enough to fit 8 people is now gone. And so basically, fuck you, senior class of Lakeview High. We're out of here. There's no attempt to save any of the other people that we saw before. We know that some of them died in the restaurant and some of them were in the disco or whatever, but there's quite possibly dozens of other students that are on this ship that they have absolutely no concern for. And then the other thing is Julius, who has been in these stormy waters for a while. He was knocked off the ship. I mean, it's hard to say in real time, in movie time, it's been, 1 or 2 episodes, I guess, but he's been in there for a while. And I feel like you got to be a pretty strong swimmer to be able to just, stay afloat out there.
We then cut to the exhausted group rowing through a fog. Miraculously, they're all dry, even though Julius just came out of the water and they were all in a raging downpour. Sean pauses rowing to check his GPS, but Julius keeps rowing, which seems like a bad idea because they're just going to start rowing in circles. Because of the lighting, it sort of feels like they were meant to be rowing all day, and it's now approaching the next evening. This made me really start to question the geography of this movie. We know that Crystal Lake is supposed to be located in New Jersey, regardless of where the movie is filmed. The southernmost point in New Jersey is Cape May, which is 150 miles from New York Harbor. I wondered how long it would take a ship to travel that distance along the coast, which presumably the Lazarus would be doing. And at 25 miles an hour, which is the nominal speed of modern cruise ships, that would only take about 6 hours. So they must have covered a large percentage of that distance before they had to abandon ship, and I wondered just exactly how far they needed to bother rowing. But in any case, Julius looks up and suddenly notices the Statue of Liberty is right there. For those of you who don't know, the statue was given to the U.S. in 1886 by France in celebration of the American independence. Nearby Ellis Island was the first stop for millions of immigrants to the United States in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Inside the statue, there's a plaque engraved with the words from The New Colossus, an 1883 poem by Emma Lazarus. It states, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door."
The reveal of the Statue of Liberty this time around was interesting to me because this was the first time that I was watching it where I realized how awesome it would have been if they had kept the New York City location secret up until this point for the viewers. So the senior class is just on a random lake cruise, and we think that's where the whole movie is going to take place, is on this ship. But we discover at the same time as the characters do that they've arrived in New York City. So essentially it would provide that same holy shit moment that we both got when we watched the teaser trailer with the guy standing on the shores overlooking New York City, and he turns around and we're like, oh my God, it's Jason. We would have been watching this movie like, holy shit, now they're in New York. This is amazing.
No, that's true. That would have been great.
But I understand, like, it's tough to do that. And the fact that he was in New York was the whole selling point of the movie. But, in theory. But regardless, at 1 hour, 3 minutes, 30 seconds into this movie, we are finally in New York City.
More precisely, we are in Upper New York Bay, which is surprisingly quiet and remote, despite being one of the busiest harbors on Earth. Energized by seeing the statue, Julius begins singing the popular Frank Sinatra song. This is something I learned in my research that totally blew my mind. I always thought that song was, a Frank Sinatra staple from like the 1930s or 1940s, but it's actually the theme from a 1977 Martin Scorsese film called New York, New York, and was written and performed for the film by Liza Minnelli. It wasn't until 1979 that Frank Sinatra recorded it for his album Trilogy, Past, Present, Future. And it's since become more closely associated with him, though he occasionally performed it live with Liza Minnelli as a duet.
Yeah, that is crazy. I always just felt like that song has been around for so much longer than that, but late 70s, that's bonkers.
I mean, I found that absolutely flabbergasting.
So the gang eventually makes it to shore, and they're on land for less than 10 seconds before Charles is criticizing Sean's choice of docking locations. And I got to admit, I'm on Charles's side here because we saw them go by the Statue of Liberty. So they're tired. They're rowing the boat. So you would think that the first place that they would want to dock would be Lower Manhattan, which would be the closest point of land. But based on where they end up, and we know this a little bit later, they're up by Times Square, which means they made a detour around Manhattan, up along the east side, down the East River, to basically like Roosevelt Island, and then decided to dock there, which is way out of the way. And Charles is right. Sean's just a shitty captain.
They wander off to find a phone, and next to their boat, Jason pops out of the water. So what did he do? Walk along the bottom underneath them the whole time?
I don't know. I was wondering, did he swim there, if he was holding onto the boat the whole time? But he was nowhere near the boat when it came out of the water. So like, that's not even really an option. It's not like he was just hanging on to a rope off the side of the boat. And maybe that's why the boat was so hard to row, because there was so much empty or extra weight.
He was secretly kicking underneath, helping propel them.
Yeah. But even if he just swam there, we know Jason can't swim. So what are you trying to, suggest here?
He climbs up a ladder and then stops cold in his tracks. Looking up, he sees a billboard for the Eastern Hockey League featuring a giant goalie mask leering back at him. Helpfully, he turns to the camera and mugs just in case we didn't get the joke.
I do kind of want this billboard, though. It's pretty sweet.
I wonder if they made it just for the movie.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I looked up. There was an Eastern Hockey League for a brief time during the 1970s, and there's currently a minor league Eastern Hockey League that started up in 2003. But it appears that this Eastern Hockey League is fictitious. But I'd like to think that billboard was actually created and is sitting in someone's basement or garage somewhere.
This chunk pretty much wraps up here on a shot of a stack of 4 crates in an alley.
As they're walking down the alley, though, there's a sign that says Seaport Crown Fish Company Limited, which I looked up, and it's based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. So from the word go, they're making no attempt to disguise the fact that they didn't really film in New York City.
This time we lose 2 actual characters, Miles and Crazy Nautical Ralph, along with the 4 randos that Brian's counting as collateral damage.
To learn more about our favorite fish suppliers in the greater Vancouver area, you'll just have to tune in next week. Until then, you're all doomed.
You're all doomed, eh?